welcome to the deep dive. Today we're diving into the Renaissance. We've got some excerpts from the Wikipedia article on Renaissance. We'll be looking closer at its origins, characteristics, and how this incredible era spread across Europe. You know, it's funny, we use the term Renaissance so casually, but people living through it didn't even call it that.
That's right. The term Renaissance, as we use it today, is really a product of later historical interpretation. But that doesn't make the period itself any less fascinating.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we get ahead of ourselves, let's set the stage. Everyone knows the Renaissance took place roughly between the 14th and 17th centuries. But it wasn't just some arbitrary span of time. It was a period of profound cultural transformation. But I'm curious, how do we reconcile that with the fact that there was no clear start or finish to this era?
That's one of the big debates among historians. Some argue for a long Renaissance, stretching from the 14th to the 17th centuries, emphasizing the continuity with the preceding Middle Ages. Others focus on the 15th and 16th centuries, highlighting a more distinct break from the medieval past.
It's not like people woke up one day and said, hey, it's the Renaissance now. So how do we make sense of this? Where do we even begin?
Well, one place to start is Florence, Italy. And when we think of Florence during this period, we have to consider the impact of the Black Death. It might seem counterintuitive, but this devastating plague actually played a role in creating the conditions for the Renaissance.
Okay, now that's what I'm talking about. That's an unexpected twist I wasn't expecting. How did something as horrific as the Black Death contribute to a period of such cultural flourishing?
The Black Death had a devastating impact on Europe's population, leading to labor shortages and a reevaluation of social structures. This, in turn, helped to empower the merchant class, who saw opportunities for advancement in the changing economic landscape.
So it's like the Black Death disrupted the old order, creating space for new ideas and social mobility.
Exactly. And Florence, with its history of Republican ideals and its thriving merchant class, was particularly well-suited to embrace these changes. The city was a hub of trade, banking, and artistic patronage, creating a fertile ground for the Renaissance to take root.
This is starting to make a lot of sense. So we've got this backdrop of social and economic upheaval, but we also have the influence of powerful families like the Medici. How did they contribute to the rise of the Renaissance?
The Medici family, with their vast wealth and influence, were major patrons of the arts and learning. They poured their resources into supporting artists, writers, and scholars, creating an environment where creativity could thrive. Their patronage was instrumental in attracting some of the greatest minds of the era to Florence.
I've always thought of the Medici as kingmakers, but maybe they were more like Renaissance makers.
That's a great way to put it. Their influence went far beyond politics. They were shaping the cultural landscape of Florence and, by extension, the Italian Renaissance.
Okay, so we've got the Black Death shaking things up, the rise of a powerful merchant class, and the Medici family bankrolling the arts. But there's one more piece of the puzzle that we need to talk about, the fall of Constantinople in 1453. I know it was a major event, but how does it connect to the Renaissance?
The fall of Constantinople, the capital of the Byzantine Empire, led to a wave of Greek scholars fleeing to Italy. They brought with them a wealth of ancient Greek texts and knowledge that had been largely lost to the West.
So it wasn't just about physical objects, it was about ideas.
Exactly. This influx of classical knowledge reintroduced Europe to the philosophy, the literature, and scientific advancements of ancient Greece, igniting a passion for classical learning and inspiring Renaissance thinkers and artists.
That's a fascinating point. It's like the fall of Constantinople opened a window into a forgotten world, providing new fuel for the Renaissance fire.
Precisely. It's this rediscovery and reinterpretation of classical antiquity. That is a defining feature of the Renaissance. It's not just a simple revival, it's a transformation, a blending of ancient wisdom with contemporary ideas and aspirations.
Okay, so we've got a lot of pieces in play here, but amidst all this change and rediscovery, there's one concept that emerges as a defining feature of the Renaissance: humanism. Can you talk about what this means?
Humanism was a profound shift in intellectual thought that emphasized human potential and achievement. It placed a high value on reason, critical thinking, and empirical observation. It encouraged a deeper understanding of humanity and the world through the study of the humanities.
It sounds like a radical departure from the more religious focus of the Middle Ages.
It was a shift in focus, certainly. Instead of solely relying on religious dogma, humanists encouraged the study of ancient texts in their original languages, fostering a deeper understanding of their historical context and meaning.
I see. So it's about studying the past to understand the present and potentially shape the future.
Exactly. And a key aspect of this was the Studia Humanitatis, which literally translates to studies of humanity. This encompassed the study of grammar, rhetoric, history, poetry, and moral philosophy, subjects that equipped individuals with the tools for critical thinking and eloquent communication.
So it's not just about ancient knowledge for its own sake. It's about developing essential skills that could be applied in various aspects of life.
Precisely. Humanism was about nurturing well-rounded individuals who could think critically, communicate effectively, and contribute to society in meaningful ways.
This is starting to paint a really interesting picture of the Renaissance mindset. It's not just about historical figures and events. It's about a way of thinking, a way of approaching the world. But to really grasp that mindset, we need to look at how it manifested in different fields. I'm especially curious about the impact of humanism on art and science. Would you say they were influenced equally?
Absolutely. Humanism had a profound impact on both art and science, leading to innovations and a flourishing of creativity unlike anything seen in centuries. In art, one of the most significant developments was the emergence of realistic linear perspective.
Oh, yeah. The technique that makes paintings look three-dimensional. I remember learning about that in art history class.
It was a revolutionary technique. Artists like Filippo Brunelleschi and Leon Battista Alberti figured out how to create the illusion of depth on a flat surface. This wasn't just a technical advancement. It reflected a deeper understanding of mathematics, geometry, and the desire to accurately represent the world. We can see this in the works of Masaccio, whose frescoes utilize linear perspective to create immersive and realistic scenes.
It's fascinating how a seemingly simple technique can represent a much larger shift in thinking.
And that shift was also visible in the way artists approached the human form. Think of Leonardo da Vinci, a true Renaissance man. He was obsessed with studying anatomy, dissecting cadavers to understand the intricacies of the human body. This pursuit of anatomical accuracy is evident in his iconic drawings and paintings.
Leonardo's anatomical drawings are incredible. It's mind-blowing how he blended his artistic talent with scientific curiosity. But Leonardo wasn't alone, right? Other Renaissance artists also pushed the boundaries of realism and observation.
Absolutely. Artists like Michelangelo and Raphael were equally dedicated to capturing the beauty and complexity of the human form. Their works reflect a deep understanding of human anatomy and a mastery of technique that allowed them to create lifelike and emotionally evocative figures.
So we're seeing this focus on realism and observation in art. But what about science? How did humanism impact scientific thought and discovery?
Humanism played a crucial role in challenging traditional scientific knowledge, much of which was based on ancient Greek and Roman authorities. Renaissance thinkers like Nicholas Copernicus, Galileo Galilei, and Johannes Kepler were driven by a desire to understand the natural world through observation and experimentation.
Wait, so they were questioning the accepted knowledge of the time? That seems pretty bold.
It was a bold move, and it wasn't without its challenges. Copernicus, for example, dared to propose that the Earth revolved around the sun, a theory that directly contradicted the prevailing Ptolemaic view of the universe, which placed the Earth at the center.
That must have been a revolutionary idea at the time. And didn't Galileo get in trouble for supporting Copernican theory?
He did. Galileo's observations using the newly invented telescope provided further evidence for a heliocentric model of the solar system, leading to conflict with the Catholic Church, which held on to the geocentric view.
It's incredible how these Renaissance thinkers were willing to challenge long-held beliefs in their pursuit of scientific truth. Their courage and determination paved the way for the scientific revolution. But it wasn't just about challenging old ideas, it was also about developing new methods of inquiry, right?
Absolutely. The Renaissance saw the emergence of the scientific method, a systematic approach to investigation based on observation, experimentation, and the formulation of testable hypotheses. This emphasis on empirical evidence and logical reasoning revolutionized the way science was conducted.
That's a game changer. This method of inquiry is still the foundation of scientific research today. But I'm curious, were there other scientific advancements during the Renaissance that we haven't touched on yet?
There were advancements in many fields. For example, Andreas Vesalius, a Flemish anatomist and physician, revolutionized the study of the human body. His detailed anatomical studies, published in his groundbreaking work De Humani Corporis Fabrica, challenged the anatomical theories of Galen, a prominent ancient Greek physician.
So he's correcting errors that had been accepted for centuries. That must have been a major breakthrough in the field of medicine.
It was a monumental achievement. His work corrected many anatomical misconceptions and laid the foundation for a more accurate understanding of human anatomy.
It's mind-boggling to think how much progress was made during the Renaissance. It's like this period was a springboard for scientific discovery and innovation.
It was a period of remarkable intellectual and creative ferment, and the impact of those advancements is still felt today. But it's important to remember that the Renaissance wasn't just about Europe. This was also the age of exploration, a time when Europeans were venturing beyond their known world, encountering new cultures and expanding their horizons.
This is where things get really interesting. Let's explore that connection between the Renaissance and the Age of Exploration. How did these two seemingly separate phenomena influence each other?
The spirit of inquiry that fueled the Renaissance also drove the desire to explore and understand the world beyond Europe. Navigational advancements and a growing curiosity about other cultures led to voyages of discovery. That had a profound impact on global history.
I'm thinking about Christopher Columbus's voyage in 1492. That's got to be one of the most famous examples of Renaissance exploration.
Columbus's voyage is iconic. While he initially set out to find a westward route to India, he ended up reaching the Americas, a discovery that forever changed our understanding of the world and its geography.
What a momentous and unexpected outcome. It's like exploration itself became a metaphor for the Renaissance spirit of pushing boundaries and challenging traditional ways of thinking.
Precisely. Columbus's voyage and the voyages of other explorers like Vasco da Gama and Ferdinand Magellan opened up new trade routes, exposed Europeans to new cultures and ideas, and ultimately led to the expansion of European influence across the globe.
This is giving me major aha moments. So we've got art and science evolving rapidly. But the thirst for knowledge isn't confined to books and laboratories. It's pushing people to sail across oceans and chart unknown territories.
It's a reminder that the Renaissance wasn't just an intellectual movement, it was a cultural phenomenon that touched nearly every aspect of life, from the way people thought about the world to the way they interacted with it. And those interactions, particularly through exploration and trade, had profound consequences that continue to shape our world today.
It's incredible how interconnected everything was during the Renaissance, from scientific discoveries to global exploration. It's like a chain reaction of ideas and events. But let's shift gears a bit. We've talked about how the Renaissance took root in Italy. But how did these ideas spread to the rest of Europe?
The diffusion of Renaissance ideas across Europe was remarkably rapid, and it was facilitated by a number of factors. One of the most important was the invention of the printing press.
Ah, the printing press. It's always fascinating to see how new technologies can fuel cultural and intellectual change.
Think about it. Before the printing press, books were incredibly rare and expensive. They had to be painstakingly copied by hand. But with the printing press, books could be mass-produced, making them much more affordable and accessible to a wider audience.
It's like the printing press democratized knowledge. Suddenly, more people had access to new ideas and information.
Precisely. And as these ideas traveled, they were adapted and transformed by local cultures, leading to unique regional and national expressions of the Renaissance. It wasn't just a case of Italy exporting its culture wholesale, it was more like a dialogue, with different regions adding their own flavors to the mix.
So the Renaissance wasn't a monolithic movement. It was a dynamic process of exchange and adaptation. Can you give us some examples of how this played out in different parts of Europe?
Absolutely. Take England, for example. The English Renaissance is perhaps best known for its extraordinary flourishing of literature, particularly during the Elizabethan era. We see this in the works of William Shakespeare, whose plays explored timeless themes of human nature, ambition, love, and loss.
Shakespeare's works are still so relevant today. His characters and stories resonate with audiences across cultures and centuries. But wasn't Shakespeare just a product of his time? Wouldn't those plays have happened regardless of the Renaissance?
That's a good question. While it's impossible to say for certain, we can't ignore the context of the Renaissance, the spirit of humanism, with its emphasis on individual potential and the power of human expression, permeated Elizabethan England. Shakespeare's plays, with their complex characters and their exploration of human emotions and motivations, reflect those themes.
I see what you mean. It's like the Renaissance provided the intellectual and cultural soil for Shakespeare's genius to blossom. But England wasn't the only place where the Renaissance took root. What about France? How did they put their own spin on the Renaissance?
The French Renaissance was deeply influenced by Italian art and culture. Kings like Francis I was major patrons of the arts, inviting Italian artists and architects to their court. Think of Leonardo da Vinci spending his final years in France, under the patronage of Francis I.
Wow, that's quite a cultural exchange. What kind of impact did this have on French art and architecture?
The French court became a melting pot of Italian and French influences. resulting in a unique blend of styles. Francis III commissioned the construction of magnificent palaces, like the Château de Chambord, which combined elements of French medieval architecture with the elegance and symmetry of the Italian Renaissance.
It sounds like the French Renaissance was a blend of royal ambition, artistic patronage,
Mm.
and a fascination with Italian culture. But let's move on to another region, Germany. I'm curious to know how the Renaissance played out there, especially considering the religious upheavals of the Reformation.
That's where things get really interesting. The German Renaissance was closely intertwined with the Reformation, a period of immense religious and political change that swept across Europe.
So instead of simply copying the Italians, German thinkers and artists were grappling with their own unique historical moment.
Exactly. They were wrestling with questions of faith, authority, and the role of the individual in society. Think of Albrecht Dürer, a master of both art and printmaking. His work is incredibly complex. It reflects the religious and intellectual tensions of the time, exploring themes of humanism, religious reform, and the search for spiritual truth.
Dürer's work sounds fascinating. I could see how the printing press would have played a crucial role in disseminating these new ideas and fueling the debates of the Reformation. But the spread of the Renaissance wasn't limited to Western Europe, was it?
Absolutely not. The Renaissance had a significant impact on Central and Eastern Europe as well. One fascinating example is Hungary. During the reign of King Matthias Corvinus, he was a true Renaissance monarch, a patron of the arts and sciences, and an avid collector of books and manuscripts.
It's amazing how a single ruler could have such a profound impact on the cultural landscape of a nation. What were some of the key features of the Hungarian Renaissance?
Matthias was renowned for his ambitious architectural projects. He renovated the royal castle of Buda, incorporating elements of both Gothic and Renaissance styles. He invited Italian artists and architects to work on these projects, leading to a fascinating fusion of Italian and Hungarian aesthetics.
So it's another example of the Renaissance being adapted and transformed as it spread, blending with local traditions and influences.
Precisely. And it wasn't just about architecture. Matthias also cultivated a vibrant intellectual and artistic court, inviting scholars and writers from across Europe. One notable figure was the Italian humanist Antonio Bonfini, who wrote a comprehensive history of Hungary, highlighting the kingdom's rich cultural heritage and its place in European history.
It sounds like Matthias was using the Renaissance to raise Hungary's profile on the European stage, showcasing its cultural achievements and intellectual vibrancy.
You could say that. Matthias's reign is a testament to the power of royal patronage and the ways in which the Renaissance could be used to bolster national prestige and foster a sense of cultural renewal.
This is all incredibly interesting. But we've been talking a lot about kings and courts, and I'm wondering how the Renaissance impacted the lives of everyday people. Did they experience these changes in tangible ways?
Absolutely. The Renaissance wasn't just an elite movement. It had a profound impact on all levels of society. One of the most significant developments in this regard was the rise of the printing press.
Ah, the printing press again. It seems like it played a role in almost every aspect of the Renaissance.
It truly was a revolutionary invention. Before the printing press, books were primarily the domain of the wealthy and the clergy, but with the printing press, books became much more affordable and accessible to a wider audience. This led to an explosion of literacy and a greater dissemination of knowledge across social classes.
It's like the printing press opened up a whole new world of learning and information for people who had previously been excluded.
Exactly. And it had a profound impact on everything from education to religious reform. Think about Martin Luther and his 95 Theses. The printing press allowed him to spread his ideas far and wide, challenging the authority of the Catholic Church and sparking the Reformation. It's a powerful example of how technology can amplify voices and fuel social and religious change.
Wow, the printing press really was a game changer. It's incredible how this single invention could have such a profound impact on history. It makes me wonder, what would the Renaissance have been like without the printing press?
That's a fascinating question to ponder. It's safe to say that the Renaissance would have unfolded quite differently without the printing press. The dissemination of knowledge would have been much slower, and the impact of figures like Luther might have been far less significant.
It's a reminder that even in a period of immense intellectual and cultural change, technology plays a crucial role in shaping the course of history.
Absolutely. And the printing press is a perfect example of how a technological innovation can have far-reaching consequences, influencing everything from religious beliefs to social structures and the spread of knowledge.
This is all so fascinating. But as we delve deeper into the Renaissance, I find myself coming back to this question. Could we be on the cusp of a new Renaissance? Are there parallels between that era and our own time?
That's a thought-provoking question. There are certainly some intriguing parallels. Just like the Renaissance, we are living in an era of rapid technological advancement and globalization. The internet and social media have created an interconnected world where information flows freely and ideas spread rapidly.
It's like we have our own version of the printing press, but on a global scale. But is access to information enough to spark a new Renaissance?
That's the key question. The Renaissance wasn't just about access to information, it was about a mindset, a spirit of inquiry, a willingness to challenge assumptions and seek new knowledge. It was about celebrating human potential and pushing the boundaries of creativity.
So it's not just about the tools, it's about how we use them. Are we applying that same Renaissance spirit of curiosity and innovation to the challenges of our own time?
That's a question we all need to grapple with. The Renaissance reminds us that periods of great change and upheaval can also be times of extraordinary creativity and progress. It's up to us to harness the tools and knowledge at our disposal and to approach the future with a spirit of curiosity, courage, and a belief in human potential.
I love that. It's a powerful message of hope and possibility. But let's be realistic. The Renaissance wasn't all sunshine and roses. There are also dark sides to that era, weren't there?
You're absolutely right. It's important to remember that the Renaissance wasn't utopia. It was a complex period with its share of conflicts, contradictions, and injustices. While we celebrate the artistic achievements and intellectual advancements, we can't overlook the issues of social inequality, religious persecution, and the exploitation that often accompanied European expansion.
It's a good reminder that history is never simple or one-sided. It's a tapestry woven from both light and shadow. But even with these complexities, the Renaissance continues to captivate our imaginations. Why do you think this period holds such enduring appeal?
I think the Renaissance speaks to our deepest aspirations as human beings. It reminds us of what's possible when we embrace curiosity, challenge traditional thinking, and celebrate human potential. It offers a vision of a world where art, science, and human ingenuity flourish.
That's a beautiful way to put it. But before we get too swept up in the romance of the Renaissance, I think we need to step back and consider how our understanding of this period has evolved over time. We've talked about the term Renaissance itself being a product of later historical interpretation. Can you talk about how historians have viewed and debated the significance of the Renaissance?
That's an important point. The way we understand the Renaissance today is shaped by the work of historians and scholars who have studied, debated, and often disagreed about its meaning and significance. It's fascinating to see how perspectives on the Renaissance have shifted over time.
So whose voices have shaped our understanding of the Renaissance?
One of the most influential figures in Renaissance historiography was Jacob Burckhardt, a Swiss historian who wrote a groundbreaking book in 1860 called The Civilization of the Renaissance in Italy. Burckhardt's work presented a vivid and compelling portrait of the Renaissance as a distinct period of rebirth and cultural flowering. He emphasized the emergence of individualism, the rediscovery of classical antiquity, and the flourishing of the arts and sciences.
So Burckhardt's work helped to solidify the idea of the Renaissance as a distinct historical period.
Absolutely. His book became a classic and influenced generations of historians and students. But of course, as with any historical interpretation, Burckhardt's views have been challenged and refined over time.
It's like history itself is an ongoing conversation, with each generation adding its own perspectives and insights. So how have historians built upon or challenged Burckhardt's ideas?
In recent decades, there's been a greater emphasis on the continuities between the Renaissance and the Middle Ages. Historians have pointed out that many of the so-called new ideas and practices of the Renaissance had their roots in earlier periods.
So it's not so much a clean break from the Middle Ages as it is a process of evolution and transformation.
Exactly. And there's also been more attention paid to the social, economic, and political context of the Renaissance, moving beyond a narrow focus on intellectual and artistic achievements. Historians are exploring the experiences of women, the impact of colonialism and trade, and the complexities of religious and political power during this period.
It sounds like the study of the Renaissance is constantly evolving, with historians uncovering new layers of meaning and complexity.
It's a testament to the richness and depth of this historical period. The Renaissance continues to fascinate and challenge us because it offers a lens through which we can examine our own values, aspirations, and assumptions about the world.
We've been talking about how the Renaissance wasn't just a period of rediscovering ancient knowledge, but also a time of remarkable self-awareness. Like they knew they were living in a special moment in history. I'm curious, what kind of evidence do we see of this self-awareness in the sources?
Well, one of the clear signs is the language used by Renaissance thinkers and artists. They often use terms like modi antici, meaning in the antique manner, or alla romana et alla antica, meaning in the manner of the Romans and the ancients, to describe their own work.
So it's not just about imitating the ancients, but about consciously positioning their work in relation to the past.
Exactly. They saw themselves as building upon the legacy of classical antiquity, but also as creating something new and distinct. They believed they were reviving the best aspects of ancient culture after a period of decline, which they called the Middle Ages.
That's fascinating. It's almost like they were writing their own history in real time.
In a way they were, and one figure who stands out in this regard is Leonardo Bruni, a Florentine historian and humanist.
Oh yeah, we mentioned Bruni earlier when we talked about humanism. But how did his work contribute to this idea of the Renaissance as a distinct historical period?
Well, Bruni was a pioneer in how he thought about history. In his book, History of the Florentine People, he introduced a new way of dividing history into three periods: antiquity, the Middle Ages, and a new era that he believed had begun with the revival of classical learning in his own time.
So Bruni wasn't just writing history. He was shaping how people perceived their own place in time.
Exactly. He was arguing that the Renaissance was a distinct break from the past, a new era characterized by a return to the values and achievements of classical antiquity. This idea of a rebirth captured the imagination of many and helped to solidify the concept of the Renaissance as a unique historical period.
This makes me wonder, if Renaissance thinkers were so aware of their own historical moment, did they ever speculate about what the future might hold?
That's a really intriguing question. While they didn't have crystal balls, their writings do reveal a sense of optimism and a belief in the power of human ingenuity to shape the future. They believed that by studying the past and embracing the principles of humanism, they could create a better world.
It's inspiring to think that they saw their own era as a turning point, a moment of great potential for human progress.
And it's a reminder that we too have the power to shape the future. The Renaissance reminds us that periods of change and uncertainty can also be times of great opportunity.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground in our deep dive into the Renaissance. We've explored its origins, its key features, its spread across Europe, and even how historians have interpreted it over time. But I feel like there's still so much to learn and discover about this fascinating period.
There's always more to explore. The Renaissance was a complex and multifaceted phenomenon that continues to fascinate and inspire us centuries later. And that's the beauty of history, isn't it? It's a journey of constant discovery.
Well said. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm left with a sense of awe at the intellectual and artistic achievements of the Renaissance. But I'm also struck by the parallels between that era and our own time. We too are living in a period of rapid change and innovation.
It's true. And just like the Renaissance thinkers and artists, we face our own unique set of challenges and opportunities. But the Renaissance reminds us that we have the power to shape the future, to embrace curiosity, and to strive for a world where human potential can flourish.
It's a powerful message to carry with us as we navigate the complexities of our own time. And with that, I think we've come to the end of our deep dive.
Thank you for joining us on this fascinating journey.
It's been a pleasure. And to our listeners, we encourage you to continue exploring the Renaissance and to consider how its lessons and insights might resonate with your own lives. Until next time, keep those minds curious. Tell us what you think about this episode. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.